But he also followed that up with, don't forget that it could have been out in the elements for that whole period of time, and think about how many days of rain and snow would have destroyed all the DNA that would have been, on her, other than the hairs that they've found.
Right.
So, it's not shocking that they weren't able to get any usable DNA because her body was there for so long, or so decomposed at least.
Do you dislike that they waited 10 years to release the items that she was carrying that were not found? Do you dislike that they waited 26 years to release the curtain and blanket information?
I'm not a fan of it, but again, I think with the blanket, the way that and I'm not trying to carry anybody's water, but the way that they said it to me and explained it to me was, in 89, if you would have sent a bag, or 1990, sent a shipping container full of stuff to the FBI, they would have told you to go kick bricks, because they didn't have enough manpower to go through all that stuff, nor did they have the technology to connect DNA. I mean, the DNA wasn't even being used yet in cases. So it was still a new technology. People were collecting hair samples and, certain sciences that aren't practiced much anymore, junk science stuff. But I don't know. I don't know where I was
Well,
going.
here's the thing. I want to say that I don't mean to claim that we're criticizing Bay Village Police Department.
Oh, absolutely not.
Because here's the thing that we got to keep in mind. They were relying on FBI resources for testing purposes of those items. The FBI was here and actively working the case. The FBI might have been straight up the ones saying, all right, these are the items we're going to prioritize. These are the items we're not going to prioritize. It may not have even been up to Bay Village Police Department at all. So when we sound like we're being critical, I asked that question as a reference to all involved, not Spetzel, not the police department specifically.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying about the, having so many cooks in the kitchen. And, you do have the FBI, you got to figure when the FBI rolls in and you are a small department, you are going to take a lot of your advice from the FBI. And if the FBI is telling you, no, we got to prioritize this, that, or the other, or they're the ones that also probably made the call about releasing the sketch, because there was pushback from the Bay Village Police on that. But again, they didn't have much to go on, so they had to release it anyway.
Well, and the one that I refer to as the famous composite flyer that was released to everybody and on the news, the one that everybody remembers to this day, was an FBI sketch artist. And here's the thing we got to keep in mind too. It was known. It was a known abduction. It wasn't like there was a question about it. That's why the FBI got involved within the first 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
It was known to be an abduction, which is a federal crime, is a federal jurisdiction. They may have had the lead on this case from, or early on, or from time to time, or for the whole thing. Who knows? And it's not Spetzel's job or the FBI's job or Dick Wren's job or anybody's job to explain to us the chain of command on this whole thing.
I never really answered your question though about being frustrated over the 10 years,
right?
26 years. Again, I give them the benefit of the doubt in the sense that they probably were just following orders as far as what they were capable of doing. And I'm sure the FBI did do what they could to get whatever they had tested in the manners that they had back. I mean, I remember looking at cases back from, even the 60s and 70s where they used like lasers and stuff to look over bodies for fingerprints. And there were bizarre ways that they would go about examining certain bodies and stuff like that, or certain evidence, I should say. And so I wish they would have the 10-year profile and the 10-year article, I think it was definitely from Cleveland Magazine. I believe the writer was Tom Kelly, and he, broke it down. Basically, it's one of the best pieces on the Amy case.
Oh yeah.
It really tells the story really well, and I believe it's even titled "Who Killed Amy." So, it's in there that they released the pictures of the earrings and the boots and the binder that wasn't found. I do wish they would have at least released maybe one of those items sooner. But again,
I would have released the binder. I think
because it was so unique.
Yeah, I think the earrings, I would have held that back as long as possible. The boots, I would have held that back. Do you remember? Did they even give a description of her book bag early on within the first couple days?
Yeah, it's actually, it is in the it's in the description underneath. Like, if I sent you the Amy flyer, it's still on the FBI's website right now. You can look it up, and there is a description. I think it was just like a denim backpack or something like that.
Right, and I understand that it wasn't one of a kind or even a rare item at all,
but it was mentioned, yeah, because I remember being questioning, like, why wouldn't they, whatever happened to the backpack? And then I followed up. A listener actually called me out on it. Was like, well, don't ask the author about it, ask the cop. I was like, yeah, it's a good point. So yeah, when I asked Spetzel, about the backpack, and yeah, they had released it, but they didn't put it in picture form because it wasn't, in their opinion, and it may not have been their opinion, but they didn't find it unique enough to put it out there. And right. I can recall, even thinking back though, to like when I was a kid, I do remember girls carrying those denim backpacks, like the bleached, whitewashed jean backpacks or denim backpacks. Like, I can picture it in my head.
But I'm glad that they released that immediately, because even though it's not a one of a kind or a rare item, it's also, the way you describe it and the way what you just said is perfect. That's why you released the description of that item, because you just described it as being a quote unquote girl's backpack. Anybody, yeah. a boy, man, or woman would look at that backpack and assume it to be a girl. So if I'm a 35-year-old man with no children and I got that backpack in my possession, well, that seems weird.
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't have been something that you would have kept around, or would have been out of place for sure. And I do recall them, the full description of the clothing. They had all that stuff out there so fast. I mean, I have all the old news clips, and they really did their due diligence as far as trying to get the public. I think what happened, maybe, and we've discussed this before, and I think we talked about it when we were at CrimeCon. I think, and Spetzel believes this too, as far as, and you believe this as well, I think, that the guy had intended to maybe build a relationship with her, and that he could potentially have a friend of that age, friend, air quotes. And it did not by any means go the way that he had anticipated. And that's why she was probably killed within the first 12 hours of when she was abducted. So,
yeah, I believe that for the most part, unless it was a specific. There's a couple of suspects that I have on my list, and two of them wouldn't have cared to even attempted to make a relationship. Once she got in that vehicle, she was theirs. Yeah. Well, at the very least, would have been assaulted and dropped off somewhere.
Sure.
But both of these are individuals that have priors.
And before we get into that, the stab wounds, I asked about the stab wounds, because if this was a crime of, impulse, like I think I showed you a demonstration when we were at your meet and greet at CrimeCon about, they don't believe the blunt force trauma was enough to kill her, but it was the stab wounds that were obviously that cut her carotid artery and
Right.
she bled out. So those were two, he said, since her body was so decomposed, it was hard to tell how damaging or how thick and deep those wounds went, but it was about 1.5 inches. So,
Right.
that's just, again, that's just in more of the theory of he had to do it on the spot, and sort of like the Wetterling case, when you found out what happened to Jacob 27 years later, that he was shot like 5 minutes after he was taken, basically.